Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at out here on this finally Friday. It is Friday the 13th, by the way, so just a heads up there if you are superstitious there in terms of numbers. Obviously, numbers have a lot of meaning when it comes to specific events. 11:25 a.m. California time. Again, September 13th, 2024 is the date. Made it to the weekend, though. California did have a little bit more earthquake activity here this morning in the region that's seen the not 7-pointer, excuse me, 4-pointer here yesterday, 4.7. That earthquake coming into the Malibu area yesterday morning about 7:30 or so, shaking things up. Quite a few folks reporting this as a much stronger shaker than a 4.7. It was originally coming in there as a 5.1 from the USGS, got downgraded significantly to the 4.7 level. That was from yesterday. Today, earlier this morning, we had a 3-pointer, 3.4 earthquake here about 5 o'clock this morning. Not quite 24 hours later here in the same region, about 6 miles here below the surface. And a number of smaller quakes there following that 3-pointer this morning. A total tally coming up on about 40 earthquakes so far. The largest, of course, is going to be that 4.7. And there's a number of 3s in there as well, including today's event, the most recent event. So just an overall sign here, folks. I keep saying it, an overall sign of the strain that's been kicking up out here across the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, the plate boundary here across California. We've seen numerous earthquake swarms out here in various areas, and I believe firmly leading to something much bigger here in the region. Now, whether that's going to be specifically on the San Andreas Fault or maybe on one of these other faults that are well overdue, it's I guess we'll have to watch and see what happens, right? Either way, can't deny the elevated earthquake activity out here, and as it makes a lot of people tend to think that these earthquake swarms here relieve strain out against certain regions of plate boundary fault systems, but that's not the case. That was televised there, but Dr. Lucy Jones, she's a seismologist there for the earthquake community in Southern California. News stations go to her for her expertise in earthquake activity and what to expect. But we can't really say exactly with certainty, whether we're going to see a big one or not. But she was asked if these quakes out here kind of relieve strain and prevent the big one from hitting. Because ultimately that's going to happen out here. We're well overdue in certain areas here, the San Andreas Fault for one of them. And, she said no. She said, unfortunately, no. And for every 4 to 5 earthquake, the chances of a larger quake goes up. But then last night, let me bring up the photo here. She was asked on a news station, I think it was KTLA, and I quote, does an increase in earthquake activity mean the big one is coming? And seismologists say no. A little interesting, right? Where, a couple weeks back here, the possibility of seeing a larger event was high and increasing because of all the elevated activity out here. Now, does it mean the big one's coming? No. But I mean, if you really think about it, the chances though out here are increasing for a bigger quake. And she said it herself. She can't really backtrack on what you say live on TV, right? I mean, that's there. I posted up there on my Facebook account. As far as that video goes, I'm not going to show it here on the channel, obviously. But it's over there on my Facebook account. You can look it up yourself. Look up Dr. Lucy Jones. And she was discussing the activity there around the Puente Hills Thrust Fault that goes underneath Los Angeles area. But, the overall pattern out here has seen a major increase in earthquake activity compared to years past. Goodness. And also that noticeable activity stretching inland here across western Nevada, as we had witnessed here over the past 30 days with various swarms kicking up out here. And these swarms don't kick up just because, just because it kicks up because of strain out here against the plate boundary. Pretty much can draw a line western Nevada here across the Tehachapi Mountains and then southward into the plate boundary. You can see that triangle or kind of an arrow pointing here, and that's exactly the topography here of the land, that fault system here. You got the Tehachapi Mountains working its way towards Death Valley, and then it hits south down here across the San Andreas Fault. I believe this area is ready. So that would be roughly around the Big Bend area southward, where all the strain's expected to accumulate there on the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. I discussed this in a little bit more detail last night or yesterday in my video, so if you didn't get a chance to check it out, it's kind of a lengthy video, but there's a lot of information to chat about there, so go check it out. It's just my previous video here on the channel. So we got this activity today, still continuing. The Puente Hills Thrust Fault over here, looks like we had a little bit of earthquake activity last night, a 1.4, not a big one. I think they kind of threw this one in there. If I remember right, this wasn't on the map. Maybe it was. I didn't get a chance to do a late night update, so maybe I missed it. But far as anything aside from the activity around Malibu, yesterday, 2.9 Ocotillo Wells area. Looks like a little bit of activity down here across the southern end of the San Jacinto Fault Zone. But overall, just some microquakes out here across our various areas that have been seen, that had seen a little bit of elevated activity here recently in various areas, Ridgecrest, Bakersfield, and numerous regions out here. So we'll continue to watch that in Southern California. It comes and goes in waves in terms of the uptick in earthquake activity. And it seems as though, even though we're getting these little microquakes in our various regions that have seen within the past few weeks, elevated activity, and that accounts for the Bakersfield region, Ridgecrest area, numerous areas down south here. More recently, the Puente Hills Thrust Fault, a little swarm offshore of Long Beach. Now we got a swarm going on here across the Malibu fault zone here, Malibu Coast Fault. And it seems as though every few days or so, a new region gets hit, an area that hasn't seen earthquake activity in a little while. So right there in itself, that tells me, folks, that things are, they need to be watched out here. I think the possibility of seeing something big out here has increased dramatically this year, just due to all the adjustment going on here in Southern California. So be on guard, stay safe, have an earthquake plan. Obviously, panic. They don't want to create any type of panic stating that there's going to be a big one here, because, well, it's just best to be prepared, folks. It may or may not happen, right? I've been hearing about the big one out here for a long time. I was reading quite a few comments here on the YouTube channel that, I remember hearing about that in the 80s. They said California was going to have a big one, and really, there was no big one. And people get confused about the Ridgecrest area over here, where they seen that 6.9, 7.1, two earthquakes there on July 4th, July 5th of 2019. That has nothing it's not on the San Andreas Fault, okay? It was a ways away from here on its own little fault system here, the Airport Lake Fault. And obviously, the strain from the plate boundary is creating these fractures and inland fault systems, but it has nothing to do. It did not relieve any type of strain out here on the San Andreas Fault. Southern segment, as I noted last night here, folks, has not seen any elevated earthquake activity in over 300 years. Where's my other image at? Stand by for a second. Not that one. Here we go. This is what I showed on my video just yesterday here. 1857 earthquake, right? There was also an 1812 earthquake down here towards the southern end, but not quite a major earthquake. So that area has not experienced a major quake in 300 years at least. And that's the one that's capable of producing an 8.1 here. Either way, if you look at these 1857 earthquakes and even the 1812 earthquake, that's a lot of time that has passed, even from roughly the central section down here to the northern section of the southern branch. 1812, well over 200 years. 1857, well over 150 years, right? And approaching, well, scary to think here. Scary to think that that's almost 200 years. 2057, yikes. Scary to think that's approaching that. Anyway, average intervals out here run between 140 to 160 years. So no matter how you look at it, we're well overdue across the southern end here of the San Andreas Fault. The northern end, not so much. That earthquake back in 1906, a 7.9 there, San Francisco, was a big one. And I don't think there's enough time that has passed to create a major earthquake out there compared to other regions, which are well overdue down here. So that's just a little simple layout. The increasing and seismic activity out here has rattled some nerves, and obviously it's good to keep the public at ease, right? You know, and they always talk about having an earthquake plan, and really that's all you can do because we don't know exactly when it's going to hit. All I know is this elevated activity out here is something to watch. It's not just happening because there's a nice breeze coming in to the Southern California area. It's happening because of high strain out here on the plate boundary. And remember, these little earthquake areas do not relieve strain. It does not push off the big one from happening. That's a fact. Unfortunately, a lot of people believe that, but that's not the case. All right, 2.1, Gilroy off of the Calaveras Fault Zone. Bay Area has been seriously really quiet up here. I find that a little odd. But most of the activity here has been confined to this bend area, roughly where the Garlock Fault shear zone intersects the plate boundary, the San Andreas Fault here, the big bend around the Frazier Park area. And that's where we've seen the majority of the earthquake activity in this region. Occasionally we'll see a couple smaller quakes up north here, like we're seeing, but it's been awfully quiet up here. And that does have a lot to do with what's going on down south here. I think we're going to see a release happening. Pacific Northwest, Mount St. Helens area, a couple smaller quakes up here. Really nothing big. Got a 2.7, 13 miles deep here underneath this area, associated with the Cascadia. Aside from that, really nothing major going on. Let me go check out tremor map here tonight real quick. Cascadia tremor, where are you? Oh, right here. There we go. 29 epicenters of tremor, southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone underneath Northern California. Not that big of a deal. It's actually a fairly minimal number. Inland across the Intermountain West areas, Yellowstone and Montana region, couple smaller quakes up there overnight and this morning. Nothing big going on. A real quick glance at Yellowstone overview here, the seismograph stations there that monitor the activity in the super volcano area there, Yellowstone. Not a whole lot going on, as you can see here across the map. Had some wind thunderstorm activity there yesterday, it looks like, but the seismograph stations out here pretty quiet. Not a whole lot happening there. Texas area, Oklahoma, New Madrid seismic zone. Got a trail of earthquakes out here across various oil fields and fracking operations. One earthquake there in the New Madrid seismic zone from early this morning, it looks like, near Marston. A little 2.2. As far as the eastern portion of the country goes, fairly quiet, as noted. All right, so let's take a look here at the last 24 hours as far as the largest magnitude goes so far today after midnight. That's going to be a 5.0 down here across North Island, New Zealand area, just outside the area, southern end of the Geomagnetic Trench. A little swarming activity we've seen here over the last few days. And we'll take a look at the globe here. Looks like some older movement there across South Island area from yesterday, 3.7. Overall, New Zealand seeing a handful of events out here. Nothing big. Most of the activity has been limited here about the extreme southern end of the Geomagnetic Trench northward, with an occasional earthquake out here across the area of New Zealand. Past 30 days of what USGS is stating here shows to be that 4.8 just off the North Island coast here. This one's a little bit further south of the Geomagnetic Trench at the northern end of the Hikurangi subduction zone, which extends right here from north tip here of the South Island all the way up across the eastern side here of the North Island coast range. South Island right here, the northern segment of it, all the way up. Goodness, that area in itself has produced some big quakes in the past, big ones. Talking about mega quakes, and that's got hundreds of years of built-up strain in it as well. keep feeling like I'm having an earthquake or something, but I don't think so. Huh, all right. A little strange. I think the mind's playing a little tricks on me there. All right, so anything else going on out here as far as worldwide activity? Getting the typical movement out here across the cluster zone. I guess that's correct as well. Or the crunch zone. This is where all the plates tend to meet out here and create that little crunch area. That's going to be the region. Let me show you guys here. Over here across the Philippines area. Got a lot that goes on here across the Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, Indonesia Islands area. That look at all the arrows. Look where they're all pointing in this general pattern area. So that's why we're always seeing 4s and 5s out there. It's just a common daily occurrence in this area. A little clustering going on here across the Java Trench as well, with some 2s and a couple other earthquakes. More recent 5.0 coming in here to the let's see, there's some 4s and 5s here north of the Himalayas right now in the China area, north of Nepal. A couple 4s stirring up out there through the last 24 hours, and more recently a 5-pointer coming into the area right now. The Mediterranean and the rest of the area here shows mostly smaller microquakes out here. I mean, a little bit of an increase out here today, but nothing on the big side of things for now. South Africa area getting a 3.0, fairly recent. And typical movement out here across the subduction zone of the Middle America Trench, where we're seeing 2s and 3s. And down here across the Peru-Chile Trench with a couple 4s out there scattered up and down the major subduction zone known as the Peru-Chile Trench here. That is a big-time deal. That subduction zone there accumulates quite a bit of strain on the average year. It's about 79 mm per year, maybe more in certain areas. You got the Nazca Plate here. Arrows pointing to the east, to the right here at the South America Plate. That's the subduction zone here. Nazca Plate slowly, eventually disappearing underneath this area. All right, let's see what else we have here. Space weather activity. Let's go over here and check this out. I know we got a couple active regions coming around the bend. This is getting a little exciting here. Here is the UV filter array here of the sun. Obviously, the bright features there indicating some sunspots and some current flaring going on there. Now, did we get named? We have a new name for an old sunspot there. That's going to be 3825. Now, a few weeks back here, this sunspot was on the Earth-facing side, known as, what was it? 3792. So if you watch this progression here, 3792 here is now approaching the eastern limb. It is visible out here and renamed as 3825 right here. It is a massive sunspot, and that's the area that has produced numerous far side explosions here, large CMEs from that sunspot. This could be former sunspot that was out here months ago. Literally, these sunspots are the same ones that have traveled around the far side of the sun and come back into view with a different name. This is not a new sunspot. It didn't pop up out of the blue. This is the former sunspot there that I showed you on the map a few weeks back, and even probably a few weeks back or a couple months back to that, it was a sunspot. So I can't keep track of how many times these go around the sun and whether they get, get that new name once they come back into the Earth-directed view. But that's a massive area down here. We're going to have to watch that. Very complex. Again, 3825. As it harbors, let's see here. There's the X-flare that was produced there yesterday while it was still out there on the far side, just barely cresting the eastern limb. 3825. Yeah, there we go. Has a beta gamma delta structure. And that is the most complex sunspot there that can produce some very large flares. So I think the X-flare chart needs to be updated here. I don't think Kevin got to it yet, but I guarantee you there's more than a 15% chance there of seeing some X-flare activity with the complexity of 3825 right now. Aside from that, a couple weak sunspots over here that will be drifting further out of view. Overall threat right now, let's see what we've had in the last 24 hours. Couple long duration M flares. There's the X flare activity yesterday from our large sunspot there on the southeastern limb of the sun. It will be obviously getting into a more directed view here in the coming days as it travels further and further into the Earth-directed view. So we'll watch for some further large flares coming up here. As far as CME activity goes, well, goodness. Yesterday during the day, early morning I should say, for Thursday, today's Friday, we got the brunt of that CME, which was bad timing out here for the North American side while it was lit up from the sun here. So most of that aurora activity was limited across the unlit side of the Earth here, across Europe and Asia, Russia area. Yeah, so obviously looks like things have calmed down here since. There's still some unsettled conditions out here over the next couple nights. Maybe a G1 class storm. The actual forecast here calls for diminishing conditions, as you can see here on the map over the next couple nights. But the possibility is still out there. It's just unfortunate there that the brunt of that material, the plasma cloud, hit us at the wrong time period here for the North American side of the Earth. Had that kicked up there, it's a G3 class storm up there around the KP index of 7. That would have been a significant aurora event there for the North American folks. All right, Storm Prediction Center out here. Not a whole lot in severe weather activity. Mainly, looks like we got a 2% chance for some tornado activity here across the Alabama and Georgia area. Huntsville included in that as well. A little bit of wind, and that's about it. Tornado and wind threat out here today. Not a big deal, but still keep your eye on the sky for that potential severe weather threat. Seismograph stations still seeing some earthquake activity there in Nevada. Notice those spikes showing up on the Grapevine Ranger station. And we pointed that out yesterday here. They're not really reporting a whole lot of the earthquake activity out here. In fact, it looks like they removed... They did. You see that? You guys remember yesterday when I was doing the... well, maybe it's been over 24 hours. Let me double check that. No, I think it was around this time. It almost looks like they removed one of those earthquakes that came in on the seismograph station that I pointed out up here north of Tonopah. But either way, goodness, they... I don't know why they're not reporting this earthquake activity, because it's been somewhat elevated. Nevada's been an area of heightened earthquake activity here recently as well, along with Southern California. Just pinpointing the importance here of the ongoing sequence of events across Southern California, about the Bend area here, Frazier Park southward, and then eastward here, and then in a linear fashion. But this activity is staying, for the most part, east of the Sierra Nevada mountains, up here around the Walker Lake area south to Las Vegas. A little sequence of events right here. And, of course, Southern California included in that, and the driving factor, the San Andreas Fault. But, yeah, not for sure why the earthquake activity has halted. Last one shows a negative earthquake, 0.1 this morning. Prior to that, a 1.6, but that's way over here. So, but I'm just talking about this earthquake activity showing up on the Grapevine Ranger station there. Those are earthquakes. I know what these look like. Little small spiky quakes there on Mount St. Helens as well. Anyway, we'll continue to watch it. We'll keep an eye on it. Now we got another earthquake here right on the San Andreas Fault, 11:37. So about 10 minutes ago for a 2.1 earthquake. Right on the San Andreas Fault there, the southern branch. So we'll catch you guys out here a little bit later, folks. Make sure you guys subscribe, click that notification bell, and if you would, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button. It does help out the algorithms out here in terms of getting the information out here to the YouTube community. Hope you guys have a wonderful Friday, and we will catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening for the Friday night update. Stay safe, folks.